Okay. Hey, everyone. Welcome back to Future Trend Today. I just want to take a second to thank each and every one of you for sending words of encouragement the past couple days, especially those that did. It was my failed attempt at posting an actual market update, and it flopped. At the end of the day, I learned from my mistakes, and I'm hoping that this time around I'm not wasting an entire half hour recording a market update with the wrong screen. But with that in mind, it's been pretty chaotic. It's been a very roller coaster ride since Bitcoin dropped below that $90,000 mark and since the overall market cap for cryptocurrencies dropped below 3 trillion. And keeping that in mind, it's been a telltale of the kinds of individuals that are pinballing around this entire market. It's filled with people that don't have any faith. It's filled with people that are not confident in what they hold. It's filled with people that are newcomers, which I can definitely extend some grace towards. But ultimately, it's a lot of inexperience. And I can speak for myself. I'm not as experienced as the most well-endowed hedge fund, but just keeping things consistent and simple is the name of the game here. I find it very simple to sit on my hands. Mind you, actually, let me not speak so highly. It's been tough. I've learned from my mistakes, and they've led me to be less reactive when these kinds of activities happen in the market. So obviously we're looking at a very on edge market. The one and very interesting index, the fear and greed index, we call it the feed and greed index because we feed on the fear of the market, mainly because of the simple age-old term, buy when there's blood on the streets, or at least be hungry and greedy when people are fearful. We tend to feed on that fear a lot. And from my perspective, sitting where I'm at, it's done me very well. Incredibly gut-wrenching. I go through an emotional log of the kinds of trades or emotional state that I'm in. I try to track my emotional state when I'm trading, and I always feel on edge when making such a decision. It's not necessarily the most reassuring to be buying anything when the market looks the way it does. But if you flip your mindset and think of it as an opportunity to get whatever you're looking at getting after doing some research at a discount, it definitely flips the entire emotional roller coaster feel on its head. You rather feel like you're actually getting a far better bang for your buck than paying at all-time highs. I say all that, and then I caveat it with not financial advice, of course. Do your own research because that's incredibly important. And once you reach a certain level of conviction on the research that you've conducted, then you may find yourself in a better position to make confident trades, confident purchases, confident investments. That's not exclusive to cryptocurrencies. It's pretty much inclusive of every other asset class, business, life decision. Sometimes you may find yourself going with the crowd, and the crowd is maybe 90% of the time wrong. If you took the opposite end of the trade, or you did the opposite of what everybody else did, you would be in a far better position than most. I'd like to believe that's the case in most life endeavors, life situations. But I digress. I want to actually touch on two things today. The fear and greed index was at 11 in my first attempt at this entire video and market update. Right now it's at 10, which means extreme fear. I'd like to see it drop into single digits. I think some people had clocked it at below 10 on other platforms. Right now I'm using CoinMarketCap. And today being November, pretty much the last weekend of November here, we're looking at a very interesting monthly close. We'll see how that actually pans out. My usual suspects that I rotate on are within the top 100. I have a couple that I'm looking at outside of the top 100, but IOTA is one. Come on, where are you? Probably around here. There you are. Quant's one. XTC is one. The interesting case study of RLUSD is one. Flare's one. We're looking at Algorand because they're more retail focused with their whole experiential engagement and UX approach. Cosmos is interesting. ONDO, obviously, very interesting because of the RWA, the real world asset angle that they're playing, coupled with Ethereum and XRP, or Ethereum and Ripple. Aptos is interesting. They have very, very unique approach to this whole blockchain and Web3 utilization. I think it's worth paying attention to. Read the white paper if you have a chance. Pepe is my son's favorite. He likes because it's a frog. I find it interesting because of the actual community behind Pepe. And just going through a few notable honorable mentions here. What are we looking at here? Dot's pretty interesting. Obviously, Sui, if you're looking at things from Real Vision, Raul Pal. Avalanche, HBAR. Hedera HBAR, very interesting project. Monero, around the whole privacy conversation, even though I don't necessarily think privacy is exactly what you're getting within that ecosystem itself. It may be not as transparent, but there are people that are skilled enough to actually filter through that noise, if you catch my drift. Stellar, obviously for retail utilization. Zcash made a run in the past week or so. Let's look at its weekly. It's weekly. I think I can get its weekly here, hopefully. There we go. So, yeah, we were looking at some really interesting... Actually, let me just step it back a little more than that. Look at that. Everyone was thinking or saying... There were a lot of opinions flying around about how this was far better than Bitcoin. The tokenomics on this are a lot more favorable. Let's see if I'm looking at the right. Oh, where are we? The right metrics here. Just give me a second here. Let me navigate it. It's far more interesting, or it's different navigating this application on mobile versus desktop, but it is what it is. Okay, yeah, anyway. So we have the max supply of 21 million, which is relatively similar to our friend Bitcoin. The current supply is 16 million. Now, if Zcash, which apparently holds the secret sauce of zero knowledge proof capabilities, if that's implemented, then this $500 price tag will look like nothing in the next few years. It's worth noting that Coinbase, actually they had a release a few weeks ago, or a few months ago rather, which I want to go through. I think a lot of people have lost sight of this entire plot. So let's see if they mention anything about Zcash here. No, they do not, but that's okay. This is worth paying attention to, but let's see what we can grab from it. I think the main keyword is KYC. No. I don't think that's the one I'm looking for. I'm looking for the KYC ZK. KYC ZK comparison. So it's saying Coinbase currently uses traditional KYC methods to like submitting government issued IDs, but is supporting and lobbying for zero knowledge proofs to enhance user privacy in the future. I think that's actually important because right now, pretty much everyone's dirty laundry is online. If all it takes is one data breach and everyone's mugshots with their driver's licenses and passports are free for all for hackers or people that have a specific set of skills that can compromise your privacy. Coinbase pushes for that. I thought that was the one. Yeah. When was this? Let me just take a look at this. August. I mentioned August a few months. I thought August, but a few months ago was that. Let's see if this is a credible source for information. Yeah. Anyway, that's some homework for you and not too much time that I have on my plate right now because I want to go through something. Yeah, so obviously Zcash made a run in the past few weeks and some people bought the high at that point. Now, that may not be a high in about 5-10 years. It may very well become a situation where Zcash and others like it, which are zero knowledge proof projects, would be favored over Bitcoin because of the shortcomings, the shortfalls that Bitcoin has. So one thing is for certain, do not ignore all assets that are not Bitcoin. There are some gems in the altcoin scene, and I think Zcash might be one of it. It might be one of those coins. I might have to take a little bit of a look at that. But Cardano is one for sure. Obviously, a lot of advancements going on, and from a very plain retail reassurance perspective, Charles Hoskinson has been making a lot of posts recently, as of late, as the CEO and founder of Cardano, it's encouraging to see someone of his stature come out and post as consistently as he is to either address questions that the community has been asking, or just to plainly talk about the condition and the state of the ecosystem that we find cryptocurrencies in. So he's worth paying attention to. I'd follow him on all social media handles if I could. Definitely the YouTubes, the X, Instagram. He's very active on YouTube lately, so definitely follow him there or subscribe to his channel. Obviously, USDC being a publicly traded company, Circle, they had a major dip in the past week, but then again, what company didn't? Like most companies did, and that is within the stock market and cryptocurrency space as well. BNB has cooled off. It was definitely around that 12, I think it was about 1200 that it was at some point. Let's just take a look at the month. It was soaring, man. Yeah, it got close to 1200. Let me just confirm that I'm not out to lunch completely here. I don't want to be completely wrong, so I just want to do my own due diligence live on the video. 1300, you see? So very well, people who were holding. I know an individual, I know a guy that actually stacked a lot when this thing was, I think, $40. Let me just go back to 2019. No, it was about 40. At least that's when he told me about it. He told me about it right here. Yeah. Yeah, but he was deep in the teens. Man. Congratulations to my guy. I will not dox or mention his name, but congrats to you, man. That's incredible. Yeah, if you didn't take profits at this point, what's wrong with you? If you bought in at this price and you didn't take profits at that price, maybe you have a better horizon, a longer time horizon than I do. I definitely have at least a decade. We'll see what the next couple of years have to say for my patience. Yeah, BNB isn't crazy good for some people. Interesting to find out that there's some correlation between that ecosystem and the Trump family. Apparently that's something that raised a little bit of an eyebrow for conflict of interest at some point, but who cares and who's counting? Not me. XRP, the chosen one, the one we've all been holding and waiting for. We'll see what that has to do with the Clarity Act in the next few weeks here. Apparently, Senate's due to actually vote on this thing. It's currently in the House. I'm talking about the Clarity Act specifically. But this is the only one that currently, to my knowledge, has regulatory clarity, as it is in itself not a security. And currently, obviously, they're in the green when it comes to the lawsuit that they had with the SEC last year and since 2020, really. But yeah, pretty interesting turn of events for that asset. We'll see whether that actually holds any water. Being liquidity is its main selling point here. You know what? I'm still optimistic. I will not badmouth that asset. I won't badmouth a few others like Ethereum. I think there's a little bit of confusion around the overall direction that this market is actually going. Obviously, there's a lot of talking heads online talking about how, at least certainly within the traditional finance space, that are talking about how Ethereum is the main player here. But if you think about it, Ethereum and Bitcoin were given an unfair advantage when that lawsuit hit Ripple and affected XRP, having XRP delisted everywhere. Very interesting, but I have my own reserved thoughts about that. Now, what do we look for? What are we looking for within this ecosystem? It's normally a Q4 conversation that the market will actually pump during times like this, especially between that whole October to December timeframe. We haven't really seen much of a knack. I personally haven't seen much to show all-time highs will be broken once again before December. I think that might be maybe me being influenced by most people that I've been watching online myself, but I want to remain consistent with my optimism. I think there is definitely something to consider with the incoming legislation. Hopefully that passes before the end of the year, even though people are actually saying that it might be a Q1 of 2026. I don't know, but we'll find out. One main takeaway from all this has been patience. Like I've been holding for quite a few years now, and this is nothing. My main metric is if XRP doesn't cross below its pre-November 2024 numbers, if it doesn't cross, let's just see that to be specific here. So all of that. So November 2024, that's 11/2024. Don't mess with me right now, guys. Yeah, So before the Trump election, essentially, before that happened, we were sitting about that 55-cent range, okay? Around that time frame, 50 cents. If XRP hasn't dropped to 50 cents, I'm pretty comfortable and happy that there is some promise. Now, if it changes direction completely and dumps to 50 cents, that's another opportunity for all of us to consider what we're going to do with our dry powder. Are we going to dive in and DCA, or are we going to sell everything? I am not a sell everything proponent. I am a sit and wait or DCA proponent because I'm a long-term investor. I think in decades, not days. I'm thinking for my kids' as opposed to just myself. And I would be very happy with myself if I was able to convince the rest of my family to stack and pack and keep, hopefully collateralize and leverage if they need the money. Otherwise, obviously work or start a business or a few businesses that are cash flowing and profitable. I would consider, knowing what I know now, I would consider buying more if it dropped. But that's only a message for myself and for my household, not for you, because your circumstances can be completely different. Certainly, diversification is one thing that I've learned. I don't necessarily want to be a tribalist and say that Bitcoin is not. I don't want to be like an all else is terrible, Bitcoin's the best, or all else is terrible, XRP is the best, or all else is terrible, don't invest in anything else but Ethereum. I'm not like that. I'm an individual that is more open-minded with my investment strategy when it comes to cryptocurrencies, because to me, it's all technology. It depends on what bus you want to ride on. We'll see to what extent we can fully take advantage of this market as the years go by. But at this moment, it's more of a sit and wait, because right now we're talking about real-world assets, tokenization. That's the language now. ETFs are a major craze as well, especially when it comes to XRP. I'm willing to be pleasantly surprised with where this market goes. We shall see. Right now, I just want to leave you guys with a recent interview that my boy RizXRP on X, go follow him. He has most of the gems when it comes to this kind of stuff. He recorded a space that Crypto in America had recorded with the Bitwise team, and they were lucky enough to have David Schwartz, the CTO of Ripple, or at least I think he's the almost retired CTO of Ripple, join the call. And he answered a few questions on that call, which I feel are best left to him to answer. Nobody better than him to answer those. So what we're going to do is we're going to just end this off by listening to a few minutes of this and see where this goes.
Around XRP and why investors are focusing on it now and what the value prop is here, David. From your perspective, what would you say is the single most important investment thesis for XRP? I've heard for many years that it's the speed, it's the cost, it's the settlement mechanism for cross-border payments. That's what the token is known for. Would you say it's one of those, or is it something else that distinguishes XRP from Bitcoin, Ethereum, or Solana?
I think XRP occupies a unique niche between Bitcoin and Ethereum. XRP is the first blockchain built on that wasn't a clone of Bitcoin or Bitcoin itself. It dates back to 2012. It doesn't use proof of work. It uses what we now call proof of association. It was the first ledger to have tokenized assets, at the time called issued assets, used for things like stable coins. It has a native decentralized exchange to allow people to move between assets. I think the value proposition of the XRP ledger for XRP is a curated set of financial primitives. So rather than the sort of free-for-all of platforms with smart contracts or the very limited functionality of something like Bitcoin, XRP Ledger has a set of financial primitives to provide useful services. We see it as a public good. We see it as something that you can't partition off or own. And these features include things like escrow, decentralized identifiers, decentralized exchange, and so on. And so it's a platform for enterprises to do business.
Can you describe some
Did you hear that?
of the...
He didn't say anything about retail. He said it's a platform for enterprises to do business. I guess think enterprise and you can take full advantage of this ecosystem. That's just an aside, but yeah, go on.
The other use cases, aside from making cross-border payments faster and cheaper, I guess aside from the financial side of things, the payment side of things, some of these other use cases on the XRP ledger that are requiring the token itself.
So XRP has a unique position on the XRP ledger. It's the only asset that you can use to pay fees. It's the only asset that everyone can hold. It's the only asset without a counterparty. It's used as a bridge asset when two tokens don't have a direct trading pair. So if you're trading between two assets where there aren't a whole bunch of people who want to trade in the other direction, the network will automatically route the trade through XRP to improve speed or pricing. You don't necessarily see it as a user, but XRP does work behind the scenes to make those markets more efficient, and that as an XRP holder in the form of increased liquidity and increased ability to trade. There's settlement for tokenized assets like real-world assets and stablecoins. They frequently need a neutral asset to settle between them. XRP acts at that settlement layer, making exchange between these assets smoother and more cost-effective. And it's not tied to any jurisdiction. So, it can be held, it can easily be acquired and held by anybody versus stablecoins, which have ties to jurisdictions. XRP provides liquidity across pairs on the DEX and order books. And then there's also cross-chain liquidity, like with the XRPL EVM sidechain and cross-chain protocols like Axelar provides. So XRP can be used in other ecosystems as collateral, as liquidity. So there's a broad range in multi-chain DeFi. And I think what we're starting to see growing in newer use cases around the permission DEX for institutional trading. So institutions can trade on the DEX while still meeting their compliance obligations, settling directly on the ledger, with the ledger providing liquidity and settlement. And then the lending protocol, and one of the most key TradFi functions is being able to lend and borrow money. And I think it's interesting as a lender, particularly because it gives you the ability to get a reasonable return for an investment of capital. XRP can be used for collateral because it's fast, low cost, and native, and it's likely to be one of the more commonly used options. But the protocol will support using other assets.
This guy is one of the most clear communicators I've ever come across. He's saying a lot, and it's going to take some time to actually decipher all of it, or at least digest it. So by all means, please pause and take notes or rewind if you need to.
So you see more demand as the demand from institutional investors perhaps rises through the ETFs. Do you see that affecting the role of XRP on the ledger, perhaps just being used more and perhaps used more for collateral in these more traditional financial vehicle type ways?
I definitely think so. I think we're in the early stages of DeFi, most of the use cases were focused around the speculative trading of digital assets, which it's a good thing, but it's nothing compared to the whole TradFi space. And so I think as we bring these institutional use cases into the ecosystem and onto the ledger, you're going to see that kind of growth of the use of XRP.
And are there any metrics that institutional investors can use to track the utility of XRP?
I think the big one is the market cap is obviously a huge metric, currently, $127 billion. I think looking at adoption by institutions for real world assets, companies like Guggenheim Treasury Services, ONDO Finance, Aberdeen, Franklin. The number of transactions processed is something like 4 billion transactions that the XRP ledger has processed, settlement speed, which is just a couple of seconds. The number of new users coming onto XRP ledger, I think 500,000 new users brought in this year alone just from Zaman, which is just one wallet platform. And then I think we're going to be able to see, like, how do the ETFs do? How do companies like Evernorth and the digital asset treasury companies do? I think those metrics are going to be, is there institutional interest? Is there growth? And so I think, and then the growth of DeFi ecosystems on the XRP ledger, like Hold, Axelar, Doppler, and those other companies to see the number of tokenized real-world assets. The XRP ledger just broke into the top 10 platforms for tokenized real-world assets, and so we'll see all those metrics.
Okay, so he said a lot, and obviously that's not the end of the actual interview itself, but yeah, I think what I'm going to stop on is the ETF conversation. So we're currently looking at two main spot ETF launches that happened last week, the Canary spot ETF, as well as the Bitwise, which is part of the reason why they're having this conversation. Apparently, the next one to lead the charge here is happening on Monday. I'll confirm that with maybe a post or something. We'll see what details we're looking at here. Let me just actually see what I can pull up here as well. Do we have anything to tell? Where are you, Chad? There's one guy that I follow for this kind of stuff, and he's pretty on point for it. Yeah, there's a couple people that I follow on Twitter that are quite in lockstep with these kinds of releases. I actually use them as a litmus test to confirm my own biases. Call me completely taken by propaganda, but at least I try to filter through what I actually consume. Let's see. I think I saw his name a few seconds ago and it just went away. There we go. All right. Okay. I don't know if that's grayscale one. Is it the Franklin or is it grayscale? Where is it? Come on. It's within the past day. I saw it. There we go. Where is it? All right. So 21 shares is apparently happening on Monday. Is that correct? I'm ready. All right. So apparently 21 shares ETF is getting launched next. We shall confirm through the grapevine, called X. What date are we looking at? Show me what I need to see. I guess that's a bad way to actually filter through because it won't tell me much of anything unless I'm looking at, where are we? Nothing so far under that search. Nothing found. Unless I go up and find some more. XRP. Anyway, there's a lot happening, okay? So one thing to take away from all this is there's a lot of ETF chatter around XRP. That is definitely something that, to me, I think the institutions are getting this asset at a discount right now. They're getting it at a discount relative to what it could be, which is not a bad thing for those that are getting exposure through ETFs. I guess it's not a bad thing at all, understanding the trajectory of this entire actual ecosystem. But I'm actually quite optimistic. Regardless of what the market looks like right now, I'll take you away with this last tweet here, or at least this last post that I technically should pin. I should pin this one here. Let me pin this again. Pin to my profile. Yes, go ahead. It's very simple. Every single dip, every single market bump is just an opportunity for me. That is the mental state which I've adopted to get me through these terrible, tumultuous, and roller coaster times in crypto or in any investment, really. Not financial advice as always, but I really appreciate you guys tuning in. I have a couple other interesting updates this week, but I'll wait for the actual week to pan out first. It's tough actually talking about positive news when the market looks as terrible as it does. We're contrarians here. We're grown-ups. We understand that it's important to remain non-reactive and focused. So, as always, future's bright. Thanks for tuning in. Don't forget to subscribe, share, hit that notification bell for the next post. That way you get notified of the next post that I make, and we'll keep this ball rolling. Hope you guys are doing well, and we'll chat again soon. Cheers.